Good day, my name is Elgin Diauna and I will be tackling about formulating your philosophy of education. But before we start, let us know my learning objectives. At the end of the lesson, the students will be able to first, formulate their own philosophy of education. Second, define the things that should be considered in formulating philosophy of education. And last, use philosophy of education in the teaching process. Philosophy is vital only when the questions are mined, and so is the struggle towards the answer. So here are some philosophy as a teacher or as a future educator. So your philosophy is your window to the world encompassed and life. Your philosophy of education is reflected in your dealings with students, colleagues, parents, and administrators. And your attitude towards the problems in life as a whole has an underlying philosophy. What does a philosophy of education contain or include? It includes your concept about the human person, the learner in particular, and the education person. So, in your philosophy, it involves the human person, the learner or the students, and the person inside the classroom or inside the school. And of course, philosophy of education contain or include what is true and good and therefore must be taught. So we must tap as a future educator the good moral to the students, and the lesson must be teach or taught to the learners in a proper manner or in a proper way in which the students will gain or absorb the information that they are going to learn from you. And last, how a learner must be tough in order to come close to the truth. In our philosophy, we must include the teaching process and considering how our teaching strategy effective to the learners. Through this, the students will learn more. So I have here some example of philosophy of education as a grade school teacher. I believe that every child has a natural interest in learning and is capable of learning. The second one is I believe that every child is an embodied spirit. So the learner has the power to see, hear, touch, smell, taste, perceive, imagine, retain, recall, recognize past mental acts, conceive ideas, make judgment, reason out, and choose. So, a teacher should always consider that each is a personified spirit, that each has a body and spirit. For this, we should not feel not only the body but as well as the spirit of these young individuals. We need teachers who are not just intellectually giants but teachers who have the big heart to care for their students, who not only give knowledge but bring our children nearer to God. The next one is I believe that every child can be influenced but not totally by his or her environment. The next one is I believe that every child is unique and so is comparing a child to other children has no bias. Yes, every student is unique. The students must be avoidable in sorting and compete with each other. The teacher must not compare their students, but as I have said, they are unique. They have their own way of studying, personality, and ability as a learner. Teachers must not be biased or having a favoritism. Maybe there is a low and a fast learners, but they will excel in their expertise. Maybe it is oral or written. I believe that every child does not have an empty mind, rather is full of ideas, and it is my task to draw out these ideas. So the child has their own ideas or knowledge. It is the teacher's responsibility to express or showcase that hidden idea. Some students, as James, express themselves, but they have something in their mind. It challenged the teaching strategy of teachers to be comfortable in his or her class so that the learner might cooperate and participate well in the class. As I always heard in my teacher that there is no a wrong answer in expressing their opinion or self. I believe that there are unchanging values and changing times, and this must be passed on to every child by modeling, value inculcation, and value integration in my lesson. So the time passed, but the knowledge we already know are always in the mind. And day by day, we'll learn unconsciously. And as a teacher, it can be shared to the learners. And how are we going to share it to our learners? Of course, through instilling of knowledge to the learner or value inculcation, value develop the teaching learning activities in the different learning ideas through the teaching process. And then last, I believe that my task as a teacher is to facilitate the development of every child to the optimum and to the maximum by reaching out to all children without bias and prejudice toward the list of children. And then making every child feel good and confident about him or herself through his or her experiences of success in the classroom. And then helping every child master the basic skills of reading, communicating in oral and written form, arithmetic, and computer skills. Next is teaching my subject matters with mastery so that every child will use her or his basic skills to continue acquiring knowledge, skills, and values for him or her to go beyond basic literacy and basic numeracy. Next is inculcating or integrating that unchanging values of respect, honesty, love, and care for the others regardless of race, ethnicity, nationality, appearance, and economic status in my lesson. Consistently practicing these values to serve as model for every child. And then strengthening the value formation of every child through hands-on mind-on, heart-on experience inside and outside the classroom. And last, providing every child activities meant to develop the body, mind, and the spirit. And now we are done citing the example of philosophy of education as a grade school teacher. So we are now tackling the philosophy as a high school teacher by Minho Shin. So the first philosophy as a high school teacher for him is I teach for the majority of the class rather than teach for handful top students. It is more effective and productive way of teaching. Lastly, I teach with interactions between teacher and students and also between students themselves. Interaction is the only tangible way of making the class intimate, open, creative, and challenging. So, communication is the best way to build relationship. Through communication, we can interact with the people around us. To summarize it up, it is important that you make explicit your philosophy of education. So your philosophy of education is your window to the world and compass and life. Your philosophy is your own thought and formulation, never formulated for you by another. That is why you were advised to begin stating it with praise, I believe. It is best to state it in the concrete, not in the abstract like a theory, because it is your blueprint in daily life. So as a future educator, I realized that formulating your philosophy of education makes us firm with our stand. It enlightens us to understand the learner in particular and will be aware of what must be taught and how these learning are taught that the students will comprehend effectively. I honestly clueless about these things before, but when reading this lesson, I realized that in order to become a good teacher, I must not let myself become ignorant.